Wassalam Salegam, and good afternoon to my brothers and sisters tuning in to the Black News Network. Today, we have a discussion about death, grief, and the afterlife process. It's so unfortunate that we sometimes have to make death defying decisions for our relatives, but somebody got to make that decision, and you can't keep procrastinating on what needs to happen when someone is basically on a deathbed. You have to have some concrete decisions. We also will discuss items about upcoming old age and how we deal with people in nursing homes and what happens after you become incapacitated. Today, we have a couple of special guests who will be introduced here in just a moment. But first of all, welcome to the Black News Network, the real voice of Black USA, broadcasting live every Sunday at 3:30 p.m. We're the people who bring you the news from a Black perspective. What we discuss is what we need to know in our own communities, and it may not involve nobody else. So, without further ado, I would first like to say thank you for joining us here on the Black News Network. And I would like to introduce my co host, which is none only the Mr. Claude Foster. Say hi, Mr. Foster. Mr. Foster.
Hello, my brother. Glad to be with you again this week to continue our discussion about death, grief, and the afterlife process. Looking forward to hearing our special guest's perspective as well.
All right, all right. That's it in a nutshell for Mr. Foster. And now, without further ado, we're going to introduce to some and we're going to present to others the one and only Miss Kayla Smith, the founder of Helen's Project. How are you, Miss Kayla?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Hello, Kayla.
Hi, how are you?
So, what are you bringing to the table? What is your discussion about today?
I think more so my perspective is from the social work perspective when a person is actively in the hospital transitioning, let's say, from an ICU level of care and then lowering their level of care all the way to home, or either transitioning to hospice or assisted living, um, any different level of care that's required. There's a lot of steps that actually happens on the back end that often people are not familiar with, and even more importantly, people don't understand like what their right is as a consumer or as a patient or as a family member of the patient or the consumer. And you end up in this kind of loop of just consistently having doctors and nurses and care managers and insurance, and you're just kind of feeling like everybody's passing the buck and nothing's getting accomplished. So a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times what I like to do with my clients or people that I support through these transitions is to make sure that they're fully educated on exactly what their rights are, what questions they should ask. Also, just even understanding from the insurance perspective, like what to know about what your insurance will cover and what you can be responsible for when your family member is transitioned into a different level of care.
Mm-hmm.
So that's more my perspective.
Okay, that's a beautiful intro from you, Miss Kayla. Can you tell us what Helen's Project is all about?
Yeah, of course. So, Helen's Project, we are a nonprofit, and our mission is to provide affordable and accessible mental health care. We are completely Black owned and operated, and we pride ourselves on that because we believe that it's a different level of care and consideration that is to our community. We do our best to raise funds to make sure that mental health care is a priority, whether if that's medication management or if it's just therapy sessions. We have trauma informed therapists, EMDR therapists. We're working on getting some more different type of modalities and things into our space as well. But the primary thing is making it affordable and accessible. And I always brag about one of my clients because he says how important it is. He's like, I make six figures, and when I redid my budget, the first thing I was about to get rid of was mental health. So of course it should be affordable. And a lot of people think, well, if I have insurance, then it's affordable. No, some people have copays that are $120 a session. So if you can't budget $120 a week, what are you going to put to the side? Mental health care. So Helen's Project really focuses on making it affordable and accessible to anyone in need.
Okay, so where are you located?
We are virtually. Our physical self is in Dallas. However, virtually we cover the entire state of Texas, Mississippi, Louisiana, Oklahoma. We will be in Colorado soon. We are in Virginia actively, and we will also be in Arizona before the end of the year.
Now, do you have physical locations, or is just what type of presence do you have? Is it a physical presence, or?
So presently we are 100% virtual. However, some of our clinicians do have the ability, or if they choose to meet with some of their clients in person, they will. Like for myself, for example, I do have some clients that I will meet in like a rented office space once a month because they want that once a month. But most people, they go to a session virtually and then they're set. They're like, no, I like this. It's just like talking to my friend, and I don't have to like go out of my way. So again, that's that accessibility piece, is not having to go out of your way to drive to an appointment, to sit in a place, being able to just grab your phone or grab your computer, hop in a session and really process things.
I mean, it's a really important field because of homelessness, a lot of homeless people have mental health issues. And I know a lot of municipalities are trying to address that. And,
Yes.
This may be a resource, that many of our listeners are hearing about that may want to, reach out to their elected officials and others that come into contact with people with mental health issues that live on the street, trying to get them off the street and that kind of.
Even veterans too.
Especially veterans. A lot of the veterans have mental health issues.
Yes, and we are in network with the VA and many other insurance panels too. We do apply for grant funding, and we do have donors and supporters too that allow us to provide a number of sessions for free, or again, medication management for clients where it's free to them, and then it's covered by someone who supports what we do.
Could you talk a little bit about how does insurance when you take out an insurance policy, is mental health automatically covered, or is that an extra fee service? I mean, how is that?
Yeah, so that's actually a really great question, because we run into this all of the time. People automatically assume that whatever policy they pick comes with mental health coverage, and it doesn't. There are several insurance policies that they have like different tiers. I'm going to talk about Blue Cross Blue Shield more specifically right now, primarily because just finished helping someone with that. There is a specific plan on Blue Cross Blue Shield where they have tiers. So it's like level 1 does not include any type of mental health care whatsoever, but level 2 will include mental health care, and your copay will be $5 for 5 sessions. But then if you go up and you do 6 sessions, then your copay is $93.88. So there's so many different loopholes with insurance when it comes to mental health care. And it's important when you are getting a medical plan, you are asking them, what is my substance abuse and behavioral health benefits? And being very specific in saying substance abuse and behavioral health, because at least in the state of Texas, they do separate the two. So if you are challenged with a substance abuse like alcohol dependency, if you have opiate dependency, anything like that, and let's say you need a MAT treatment like Suboxone or any of those type of treatments, that's a different type of treatment. Or even if you need an inpatient level of care, some mental health benefits, again, may cover outpatient care, but they don't cover inpatient care.
I mean, wow, it seems complicated for if you're on the receiving end of the service or trying to provide for someone. That seems like a complicated type of insurance, especially for people of color.
Yes.
So how do you make it simple for people that really don't have the capacity to get deep into the insurance field, learning how to get these benefits? How do you connect with people that kind of avoid this type of treatment? How do you do that?
So I want to make sure I understand your question correctly. Are you asking like, how do I explain this to others, or you're asking like, what's the best?
Well, so as far as resources, I mean, let's say you do veterans, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is your process to gain more veterans into the system to get the counseling and to convince more veterans to accept this type of counseling? What type of methods could you use, or could I use as a non-provider to convince other friends that are military people that may need this counseling? How could I do that?
I'm very blunt and to the point. I tell people all the time, Black people are real quick to tell you to pray about it and go to church.
Yeah.
Like, well,
So that's for everything.
pray about it. You'll
Pray
be all
about
right.
Pray about it.
Lord.
it.
And that is no judgment to anybody, but schizophrenia is not the Lord speaking to you. Like, let's talk about that for real, okay? So I just tell people, you can go to therapy and just see what it's about. Like, take an opportunity to just come. If you feel like you are a person who wears the world on your shoulders and you have no one to talk to, go to therapy. Because guess what? I get paid to listen to you. I literally have to hear everything you have to say, and you get some really great insight and conversation, and even having a place to bounce ideas off of. I have some clients who are in the entrepreneur space, and we talk a lot about how being an entrepreneur is traumatic. And no one talks about how traumatic it is to be an entrepreneur and then to have other people depend on you. And we talk about that for an hour every week. I have some people that come because they hate their job. It's about understanding you going to therapy doesn't mean you're crazy. It just gives you a place where your voice is heard no matter what. And there's no one there to judge you.
What about in the mental health space? There's not a lot of Black people in that space.
Correct.
In terms of people that look like us. Is that an issue to access?
I think that it's one of those caveats. I'm sure you guys have heard the saying "crabs in a bucket." That Black people of color can be very much like crabs in a bucket, where it's, I don't know if I want to support this Black business or not, or this person's Black, so they probably have the same stereotypes as me. But then there's other people who are willing to be open-minded and really recognize, like, what, this person may have a shared experience. I can really connect with them. There's actually a video on our Instagram, which is just like a recommendation from a client, where she went to a non-person of color for therapy. And one of the things that she hated about it was that they tried to change the way she spoke. And she was like, I would say things using, the vernacular of typical Black people. And
Right.
the therapist would say, can we reword that because you're not a child? And that caused her to shut down. And she never got an opportunity to really process. But that, for me personally, in my beliefs, I don't think that that's necessarily based upon being a person of color. That's also being culturally competent and meeting people where you are. Because if you look at my caseload, most of my caseload is not Black people. I have a lot of individuals who are Muslim, who are Indian, who are white, who are Black, who are all different things.
But is your caseload emblematic of the access issue that we're talking about in terms of what's the access for mental health services through insurance policies that people of color tend to have, or Black people in particular, tend to have a much more difficult time accessing and or paying for?
I would say that my caseload is a reflection of the diversity that's available to people who want it. Because within my caseload, there are people who they got a job. The job offered them like 2, 3, 4, 5 mental health sessions. I shared to them like, hey, this is what we offered because you've mentioned a friend, a family, a coworker who has no insurance. This is what we offer. And what do my clients do? Oh, I'm going to tell everybody. Everybody's getting into therapy. That was everybody's present this year. It's a person's choice to decide.
So one more question, and then we're going to move into the beginning, and we're going to kind of tap dance on what we've done the last 2 weeks, and then we're going to move into what we're going to talk about today. But the last question I want to ask you before we get into that process is, what makes you qualified to do this type of service? What are your credentials?
I am a licensed clinical social worker, and I'm also a TBRI and EMDR trained therapist. So a lot of school, a lot of hours, a lot of time. So when you are looking for a therapist, it is very much recommended that, you can look at the letters at the end of their name. We have LCSWs, you have LPCs, you have MFTs, you have all of those things. But it's also important that you just look at the person and are you able to build a connection with them? And are you able to build a connection that will allow you to grow?
Okay. That is the opening of our show. So now it's about time for us to go back in time and talk about what we really started talking about in this arena. And then we're going to work our way up to what Ms. Kayla is a professional. So we started talking about how people are neglectful when it comes to burying our kind, our people. Sometimes you see people out trying to sell hot dogs or barbecue plates to raise money. We don't discuss the importance of having burial insurance and enough insurance to cover your retirement. So how do we get started here and make sure that many of our listeners can get the information they need to start something in their families that don't want to talk about it? Not end up looking to sell hot dog plates and barbecue plates and begging relatives for money to put somebody on a bed. How do we get started? How do we start a family on this process?
Hey, Brother Bay, I don't know whether Kayla can hear
I was
you,
going to say the same thing. Your audio is a little
but your
scratchy.
audio is really muffled.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. Did the sound any better when I move closer to the mic?
It's almost robotic.
Yeah, it's like robotic like here, and it's not clear.
All right, I don't know what's stopping my voice
That's
from coming through.
Better.
That's better.
Oh, it's better now?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we went back.
Yeah, whatever you did just a second ago worked.
Mm-mm.
Still no good?
Mm-mm.
All this technology and you still can't seem to hear what I say. Listen to it and hopefully you can decipher the language and I'm going to try my best. So that's all I got there.
You can do the infamous unplug it and plug it back in. That's what all IT
Yeah.
tell you to do. Unplug it and plug it back in. It doesn't work.
Okay, so go ahead and start the discussion on that issue, and I'll work on my audio.
But I think he's talking about the issue of access, and it's like we have a lot of nonprofits within, especially within Black communities, that provide a lot of different services. Yet this problem it tends to the reason why we're having this show is because there's not a lot of information out there. I'm here in Houston where homelessness is a major problem, and there are dozens of nonprofit organizations that don't seem to focus on health. Voting rights teams is out there, really important in our communities, and other issues, but not so much mental health.
Mm-hmm.
How can we change that? I mean, what do you think needs to happen to create more awareness, to create more understanding of this topic?
I think that's just it's a hard space to really break into. Again, I'm going to focus on Texas. So
Right.
a little historical context for Helen's project and the journey to where we are now. We actually started specifically in the homeless housing space.
Mm-hmm.
And we received a lot of pushback because we did not believe in the Housing First initiative. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
Okay. I'm familiar with that.
So we're not a big fan of the Housing First initiative, at least when we were working in that space, not because we see how ineffective it is, but more so because we saw the problems that came with it. If I take a person who has chronic mental health issues that are unaddressed, I put you in an apartment and then I cross my fingers you have effective case managers. But again, I'm not really enforcing therapy, budgeting, billing, like how to fix basic things in your house, basic life skills. You're going to fail. And so our model focused more on let's get you into therapy. Let's get you into case management. Let's put you in financial literacy. Let's make sure you know how to have a budget. Let's make sure you understand a rent. Like we wanted you to understand the concepts of being housed first. not just putting you in housing. And so because the Texas has spent so much money on all this research to create this Housing First initiative, you're asking an entire state who's invested so much money in something to admit that it's wrong.
I think the Housing First initiative, especially in Texas, because I was working at city council at the time, and it was big here in Houston. There was more focus, not so much on the person as they were getting the person out of sight, out of view, out of mind, kind of policy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's really challenging to try and, again, convince an entire state like, hey, you were not focused on the person really understanding what it means to have an apartment. And during like this big push and this big initiative of putting people into all of these housing things,
Right.
these housing programs were not clearly explained that, hey, yeah, we're going to pay your rent for 6 months and then you got to pay it. Or we'll pay your rent for 2 years, but then you got to pay it. Or, yeah, you can pay your rent. It'll be $20. You're responsible for $20 plus insurance, plus lights, plus this. But if I don't have a job, my Social Security benefits are limited. I don't know how to create a budget. And since I've been living homeless, my money has always been spent on survival. How do I know how to live comfortably when I've always had to survive? I have no clue.
Yeah.
So that space and then transitioning to where we are now, where we are, hey, mental health, that's what we need to focus on. Because if your mental health is not okay, then you can't take anything else in.
Now, are you guys connected to these not so much low income tax credit housing, but I know there are developments that are specifically for the homeless. Do you find it easy to access those kind of facilities?
So when we worked in that space, 100%. But like I mentioned, it's been a transition of Helen's Project. Just, again, our vision did not meet the same vision of the city. The city's vision is housing first. Like you said, get them out of the way. And our vision is, if they don't want to, I'm not going to force them. I'm going to mitigate the situation, help them, support them, educate them, and gradually move them and not abruptly move them. And so that did cause a lot of friction and conflict with us in the city. And we were like, you know what, let's do what we do best, which is focus on mental health. And that's
it's funny you say that, because you would think in cities, especially in cities that have mayors that look like us, especially these major cities, that wouldn't be a conflict between what you're trying to do and what they're trying to achieve.
And we had great success when we worked specifically in the housing space with our model. Even to this day, some of my clients are still successfully housed, and they still reach out and they're still like, hey, I'm doing really good. Or, I had hit a bump in the road, but I remembered this class and I remember you taught us this. So I was able to still maintain my housing. Or, hey, I just bought a house. I just got a car. We're still seeing long-term success from our process.
Right.
Okay, so can you hear me now?
Yay,
yeah,
there
not
you
better.
go.
Yeah, welcome back.
All right. So now, when we can't pay for a burial, what's the process? Will the hospital hold our bodies until we raise the money, or will the funeral home hold our bodies? How does that work? What happens when you die, and now we have money to move you from the hospital or from your home to the morgue or to the funeral home? Do the funeral home work with the family to pay an expense to hold the body, or what? How long do you have?
Oh, is that a question for me?
But either.
Oh.
I don't know.
This show benefiting me too, because we've raised a lot of questions that
So you are the guru, so tell us.
I'm the guru today. Okay. So I think we need to back the timeline up when we're looking at death, grief, and afterlife procedures, right? One of the things when I used to work as a hospice social worker that we learned very quickly in training is that you should be planning for death the day that you're born. And that sounds very morbid, but when you work in this space, you understand it very, very clearly.
Yeah.
And so when you are planning for death the day that you're born, exactly what you said, which is a person has passed away, and now you have people selling barbecue plates, you have GoFundMes, you have, I can't afford the burial, what are we going to do? So in preparation for this show, I have 3 specific cases that I can kind of give examples and perspectives of. The first one is an individual who passed away, young person in their 30s. No one expected this to happen. Child is 18. She has no idea of anything, and no family, and no good friends. A lot of chronic medical conditions. So when she passed, the first thing the hospital said is, "So where's she supposed to go?" And everybody's looking like, "I don't know. We don't know." And then the next question was, who's going to pay for it? Because the hospital said, "This is our contracted people. If you don't decide in 24 hours, we will decide for you." And it goes to the next available mortuary that is able to pick up the body. And then you are responsible for whatever debt that mortuary has. So if that person is the next up to pick up the body, they're going to pick up the body, and then they will talk to you. They will coordinate you with you, but it's going to come with a price. And they'll hold the body until you have the funds.
And
Now,
that could be
That's
from
true. Yeah,
6 months or
Or
what?
hold that body.
it could be. So this particular individual was held by this mortuary for 9 months. They held her for 9 months while they came up with the funds.
But they
And
would
this
not budge until the funds.
Nope. The only thing they were flexible on is when they paid. So they had a payment arrangement. They had dates and times like they had to pay for the total cost. But outside of that, this was the total cost, and we'll wait until you have the money. So 9 months later, finally had a service.
So once they finally got the money together, they picked up the body, and now it's time to move forward with the preparations. What's going to take place now? So you take the frozen body, defrost it, prepare it, dress it, embalm it, pick a casket, pick a grave site. Once you pay for that grave site, though, it's yours for life, right?
Yeah.
Not-
Yes.
You don't have to pay for it every month, basically.
Unless some governmental agency digs it up
Some
for
places, you don't pay every month. You got to get dug up and put somewhere else. I'd hate to be in that cemetery. But once you in the ground, that's it. That's your lot, your plot for life. For death. You don't have to get moved anymore, unless they're putting a highway through, like they did with your great 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 grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know where her grave is to this day, and I think it's under the highway. But moving right along. So you raise the money. The funeral home is now embalming you, placing you in a coffin, but you have to pick that coffin. You have to pick that outfit that individual is going to wear, and you have to design or come up with a headstone or no headstone, because headstones are usually separate cost.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have to pick the location. They say, well, this is the plot that we have set aside for what you paid for.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time, people don't reject those sites. If they give you a plot, you're so happy to get a damn plot, you ain't saying nothing. You going in that plot wherever it may be in that cemetery. So, but if you pre-plan, you can pre-plan a plot next to your relatives.
Mm-hmm.
Don't pre-plan. You're going to take whatever slot that the funeral home cannot sell.
Mm-hmm.
They put you in the back of nowhere, wherever nobody else want to be. That's where they put you. So that's very important that you pre-plan these things. And the things that you have to pre-plan is the coffin. You have to pre-plan, well, the cemetery, the funeral home first, then the casket, the vault, whether you want a plastic vault, whether you want a waterproof vault, whether you want no vault at all, just drop the casket in the ground.
Which is illegal now.
That's
been illegal ever since Hurricane Katrina.
Oh, you can't just bury a casket?
No, ever since Hurricane Katrina, because Hurricane Katrina happened and they had millions of dead bodies floating because there was nothing to weigh them down.
Okay, and then so that concrete vault will keep that casket from floating down the river. Mm-hmm. Okay, so now you're interned, and then now the funeral home trying to get more money from you, so they're going to say, well, do you want a limo, or do you want 2 limos? Do you want a police escort? Or do you want an official officiating? You want to have your service here at the chapel for the funeral home, or do you have a church that's going to hold your service? And if you go to decide that have a parent church, then that pastor wants a love offering. You got to pay him to officiate the funeral, because if you're expecting him to officiate that funeral and do a sermon like normally in black folk churches, that pastor ain't gonna say but so many words before he's ready to send you on to motherland. So you have to pay the pastor, then you have to arrange for using the church on a particular day that they don't have anything else planned. So you have to do a lot of planning and a lot of scheduling. And then when you're paying for the limos, why would you get two limos when you only have a family of five?
But I think it's important to recognize that if it's already been established that the family lacks financial capacity, that
Mhm.
the funeral home is not going to offer you all of these things. The funeral home is going to tell you, you are
Mhm.
going to get this, 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 and this because it is in this package, and this is what you need to give us to afford this package.
The funeral homes I know, they maximize. I don't give a damn how much money you got. They'll take your house, put your house up for collateral.
Mhm.
They'll put your
But
car up for collateral. Huh?
but again, this is working in different spaces, right? So
Mhm.
understanding and knowing your background a little bit more, the level and capacity of funeral homes that you have dealt with and affiliated with are from middle to upper class, while many of the places I have dealt with have been lower to homeless, a lot of Jane Doe, John Does, and they have no one and nothing. So the state and other people who don't know this person at all are responsible for the decisions of this person, and they're no longer a person, they're a number. They're a Jane Doe or a John Doe or a baby Doe.
And you got to remember, the death industry business is no different than any other businesses. Just like there are predatory type businesses for non-funeral home type businesses, there are predatory, like Kayla just described, businesses that serve a certain demographic group or a certain
Mhm.
class of citizen. So it's not equal across the board. Just like in a lot of the, school systems, there's no classes on this subject about estate planning, afterlife planning, or any of this kind of stuff. I mean, you get it when you get it. You get it on shows like this. It's like out in the air. I mean, if it lands, it lands, and if it sticks, it sticks.
And
Mhm.
I think too, like in back in topic with where this conversation started when it comes to planning, right? If we plan all the way back to the point of being hospitalized because you have a chronic illness, right? And like I mentioned, there are people in the background, there are care teams in the background who are helping navigate this. And most people don't recognize that there are care teams in the background. So I want to pose this question. Have either of you been hospitalized for anything?
Yeah.
While you were hospitalized, did you ever meet your care manager or your social worker?
Never met us. Yeah, the social. Yeah, it was a team that they came around. They introduced
Nope,
social.
not the team, but just your individual social worker or care
No,
manager.
I don't recall because
I
I
don't.
probably was so drugged up I wouldn't know if I did.
Yeah,
So
I don't remember.
So, my reason for saying that is exactly what you just said. Most people are so out of it because you just came out of anesthesia, you're still being pumped full of meds. You probably had this person come in your room for 5 or 10 minutes,
Mhm.
said, "Hey, this is who I am, this is what I do." They've met their fulfillment, and then you don't see them again. But who you do see is the nurses who say, "Hey guys, so a part of your care plan is we're going to move you to the next floor. A part of your care plan is we're going to move you to the next hospital. A part of your care plan is we're going to move you here." But you're not meeting the person who is in charge of that care plan. And that is the person you need to be asking for when you are cognizant, when you are aware, when these changes are happening. Because most people don't realize the nurses, they're the messengers. They're the ones who were yelling at and blaming, but they're not the ones who are behind the conversation.
mhm.
The role of the care manager and the social worker is to take all the information from you, they put it together real nice,
Okay, I
and
think we
then
remember.
they send it off to other places based off of your ability to pay and your insurance. And then they find whichever one will take you, and then they tell the nurse like, "Hey, this facility will do this, or their insurance will pay for that. Go pass the message along, and that's going to be a part of their treatment plan. And they get the doctor to sign off on it, and then the messenger is the nurse. They come and tell you,
I do
and
remember that. Yeah.
you're just kind of like, okay, that sounds good, right? But where's the explanation piece of like, hey, you are going to go here because this is all that your budget, your insurance, your whatever will approve or afford. Or, hey, we sent this off to this many places, and then you go here. And then you go home and you get all these letters in the mail that say claim denied, a pre-authorization denied, and you see all these random names. And you're like, who the heck are these people? I don't know them. And you automatically assume it's the different people in the hospital while you were hospitalized. In actuality, it's all the prior authorizations that have been sent off for pre-approval for your care. And because we automatically assume these things, again, that comes into our poor planning because we don't know.
So it basically reverts back to planning, like you've been saying all along.
Comes back to planning and being knowledgeable about what to ask and who to ask, because you can end up on the back end of something that you don't want to be a part of.
So what's a good process to start the planning? Do you start out as, like, for instance, I'm just Joe Smucko out here in the world, and I said, well, I need to plan my mom's death benefit. So how do you do that? How do you approach your mom or your dad about these type processes and expect them to give you the answer? Because I've noticed that a lot of Black people are afraid that you're going to put insurance on them and collect off of it. Why are you afraid of that? Don't get it.
Because, money makes people funny. That's why.
But they don't want their relatives getting paid off of their corpse.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, but that's crazy.
You can always have this conversation one of two ways. In my family, I have mostly older people in my family. So for whatever reason, I get asked all the questions. But the conversation is very simple. It's either, do you want me to do it or do you want to do it? And then just tell me about it. That's the only options I got for you. Either I can do it for you and then I can give you the rundown, or you could do it yourself. I'll give it to you. You do it yourself. And then you just tell me where to find everything. And most of the time they will try themselves. And then I get, Kayla, this is too much. This is too many phone calls. This is too many questions. It's too much paperwork. They asking me for too much. I don't want to do all this. And I say, cool, I got you. And I can get it done in about 15 minutes because I'm used to it. But that's the other piece of it, is the time commitment that it takes. Because if you do get like a death benefit policy or a life insurance policy, you are going to be on the phone with them for at least 30 to 45 minutes because you're going to answer all their questions. You're going to answer all their questions. They're going to go through all the different benefits. They're going to go through all the policies. They're going to go through all the things. And if they're saying a bunch of words that you don't understand, you're just going to say either okay or this is too much. And I'm going to do my little ADHD swirl here for a second. When I was in the 6th grade, I had a teacher, a science teacher, who was from Canada. And our first day, he said, I am going to teach you how to learn because Americans don't know how to learn. We were like, what? And he gave us books, and it literally said, learning how to learn. And it was like, I see dog run. And we all were mad because we had to spend weeks doing these books and these assignments. And we were so pissed off about it because we're like, we're not stupid. We're not stupid. However, what he taught us is to actually understand the concepts of the words, that the words have meaning and the meaning have value and the value create purpose. And what happens with people is they get lost in the words. So, for example, when you asked me like what my credentials were and all those things, and I said, I'm a licensed clinical social worker and I'm TBRI trained and an EMDR therapist. Do you know what any of those things mean?
Nope.
Did either of you ask either?
No.
Not really.
Exactly. And that is it.
I figured you knew what it was.
But you just proved my point that that's what Black people do when we do death benefits. Someone calls and you get on the phone and they're like, okay, cool, we can do a total life benefit, a da-da-da-da-da, and they run all these words off. And you, again, the ego of it, the assumption of it, yeah, I know what you're talking about. I watched an Instagram and a TikTok video. I got this. But you don't stop and say, wait a minute, what is an on-death benefit? What is a term life benefit? Like, you have to recognize and understand it's okay to ask, what does this mean? Don't talk over me. Slow it down. What does this mean? I will tell you that class in 6th grade, I have never forgot it because I looked up the word the so many times because that was my assignment, was what is the definition of the? And I had to do it at least 30 different times because he said, if you don't understand the word the, then you don't understand the sentence.
Mm-hmm.
So again, you bring it all the way back to planning and understanding. If I don't understand what you're explaining to me, why am I going to give it time? And if you bring, we can go all the way back to generational history of being able to understand concepts and, you know, Black people, people of color having to perceive themselves and fight for that space to say that I am knowledgeable. I do know what I'm talking about. Why would I want to present or give off the impression that I don't know what I'm talking about by asking you to repeat yourself and explain something to me? I'm not going to do that.
Because it makes you look ignorant, or at
Exactly.
least you think it makes you look ignorant.
It's a self-perception. Yep, exactly. So that hinders us from our ability to plan, our own self-perception, our own views of incompetence. Because like you mentioned, Mr. Foster, you don't have platforms where they teach you about this. So if I have to reach out and go do it, that means I have to admit that I don't know something. That means I have to admit my lack of knowledge in order to gain knowledge. How comfortable is it for you to go into space and say, I don't know what this is. Come tell me what to do.
All right. So we do the planning. We got the basics down. We took the person that we want. I want you to plan my funeral. So let's go to the funeral home. I want to show you the casket that I like. I want to show you the vault that I like, and I want you to know what funeral home I like. And this is where I want you to do my remains. So you handle that part, and then you, as far as the insurance policy, for instance, why is it that we have to go hunt for the damn insurance policy anytime somebody die? Or where's the insurance policy? Oh no, did you have it? I ain't got it. Then look over there under the damn dresser or something on the bottom, take to the bottom of the drawer, wherever it may be.
Inside the Bible or something. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's part of our history. You know, we don't trust a lot of Black people don't use safe deposit box for example.
So what about you, Claude? What do you keep your stuff like that? Who do you make sure know about it?
I make sure my wife has all the documents, insurance policies, passports. I mean everything, wills. She has it physically. Now it's here in the home, so it's not like a safe deposit box or anything like that.
And it was a conversation. You had a conversation about it,
right?
So we know what we needed to do.
So she would know it. Like if I drop dead tonight, she would know where all those documents are.
Without having to look for it. I recently went through a case where I had to go and search through a damn 1,000 documents to find the insurance policy. Right. And the insurance policy was of a value that really was cutting the border. I mean, you couldn't do no extra stuff with this amount of money that's on the insurance policy. So you got to be very conservative about your wishes when a person dies. So I can't have a damn Liberace funeral with a $10,000 insurance policy. Because some people have the false impression that, I got an insurance policy and it's $10,000, and they think they got a mint sitting over there, and before you get the casket lining in there, you $10,000 short. So I'm saying you got to be able to get the right amount of insurance based on your level of what you expect after you pass. And then if you expect your following generation to value from your passing, then you have to ensure that you insure yourself at a level where the money that they receive is going to sustain them to another level, to another economic level, really. And when we talk about economics, we think we going to hell because Black people are so stuck on this damn you can't go to heaven because you can't get through the eye of a needle, you know, because you're rich, you know. So you don't want to get nobody, you know, a $500,000 insurance policy because that's too much money for somebody, you know.
I have a question. I'm sorry. So, about where you keep your paperwork and stuff. Do you guys have your IDs on you? Do you have your ID? Okay, grab your ID. Don't show it, obviously, but grab your ID.
I don't have it on me.
Oh, okay. Well, do you have your ID, Mr. Smith-Bey?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Look at the very back of it. Okay.
Okay.
And on the back of it, on the back of your ID, next to that barcode. Yep, on that back part. What does it say on the back part next to the barcode? Underneath the rev number.
Directive to physician has been filed at telephone number, but it doesn't show it. Emergency contact number, it doesn't show it. Allergic reaction to drugs, it doesn't show it.
Because you didn't fill it out on your application. When you have your documents, all the documents you have in your house, Mr. Foster, go give it to your doctor's office and tell them to put it in your chart. And then when you do your ID, it says, where's your advance directive? You put that phone number on there.
What's an advance directive?
It's your wishes.
Yep, your wishes.
Your wishes.
I just wanted to hear it.
Yep. That emergency contact. Who do I call in the case of emergency? It's on your ID. And not only is it on your ID, if someone were like a police officer or EMT were to pull your name, your date of birth, anything in the system, that information will come up.
It'll be there. Okay.
And that is the easiest way for people to get a hold of all of your stuff. So that way you don't have to dig through thousands of paperwork and try to just guess codes to safes and find it duct taped to a ceiling fan on the third floor attic. Like, we don't have to play Indiana Jones to find it.
So you saying go to your Department of Motor Vehicles and do what now?
When you fill out your application on Department of Motor Vehicles to get your driver's license, your ID, it says on there, advance directive, fill the information out. Most people skip it because it says optional. It says, who's your emergency contact? Most people skip it because it says optional. Fill it out. So if anything ever happens to you, it is very easy to know what to do with you when they get you.
Oh, okay.
So for example, on mine, if you were to pull my name up in the DMV system or anything, it says call my dad. It says call my dad first. It says call my sister second. And then I have 2 friends on there after that. So if you can't go down that list and find out something about me, then you don't know what to do.
You know, that makes sense because people are involved in accidents or in isolated locations where so how do they trace you? Yeah, that makes sense. Know who to call.
So yeah,
and
part
most
of the
people
planning process.
don't have that continuity. So we're so tight with who we are and our information. We act like we're Indiana Jones secret trying to be discovered. We don't trust people 3 removed from ourselves. In other words, there's not 3 people that you trust with your information. That's kind of what I'm trying to say. So we have to really start to believe that they can't use it. I mean, most people don't have the intellectual ability to take your information and use it for themselves without getting caught. So you have to let somebody else know outside of your network. For instance, let's say a tragedy happened here in San Antonio where I'm at right now, and no phone communication, no nothing. Then somebody would have to know outside of this house where I live that you can find him in another city somewhere at this location. That's more than likely where he went, even though you can't contact him. But if you go there, I bet you find him. Because when he leave here, if he left his city, this is his next door destination.
Let me talk about that, because I didn't have this discussion with my dad, and my dad doesn't seem to understand the importance of sharing the location with your child when you decide to rip and run on the road. What was just said, this is extremely important. There is a space where people feel like, it's controlling to share your location. It's controlling to have it shared all the time. However, to your point, Mr. Smith-Bey, if I am out in Timbuktu somewhere and and someone calls my emergency contact and says, "Hey, do you know where Kayla is?" That person is able to look on their phone and press find Kayla, and they can say, "Yeah, the last time Kayla was seen was at this address." But some of our senior friends don't seem to understand that us younger generation are trying to protect our parents because they think they can travel and be on cruises and biker rallies and all these things. And we just sit at home and worry.
So your dad wouldn't go for the Find Me app on his phone, huh?
He keeps turning it off. And you have to keep telling him, like, turn it on. Oh, I don't want to do it. But it's not a matter of being nosy. It's exactly what was said. If you're going to do these things and live your best life, that's wonderful. Do that. Enjoy your life. But understand that part of planning, if something happens and someone calls me and says, "Hey, we found Mr. So-and-so in Corpus Christi," I'm going to say, "He's not in Corpus Christi." And then right then and there, that conversation is shut down and you are now John Doe.
Wow. So it's important.
Very important.
Know.
I should probably call my dad after this show and tell him to turn his location on, huh? That might be a good idea.
It might just work, huh?
It just work.
He might understand what you're trying to communicate to him.
He might get it.
All right, so that makes sense. Let somebody know, and I even brought it up. Third removed person, not knowing your whereabouts, not knowing how you intend to go away.
I think what Kayla just said about the as long as I've had a driver's license, I don't think I've ever filled that information out. You say it's optional. Why isn't it mandatory?
You can go back and fix it though, right?
Yeah, you can go fix. So if you renew your license online, they do make you put in the emergency contact now with that real ID law that passed. Now it's becoming mandatory for at least the emergency contact piece if you do it online. Now, if you do it in person, I have found that some people in person still skip it. But if you do it online, it won't even let you go to the next screen without an emergency contact person filled out.
Yeah, that sounds like a legislative kind of thing that our politicians
down by law.
Well, I mean, whenever there's a problem, Black people have a bigger problem, Yeah. So I mean, when it comes to making that, I mean, to me that would be some legislation requiring. I mean, what would be the downside of requiring that, making that mandatory?
Some people don't have emergency contacts, though. I will be completely true about that. Even with my paperwork, they skip it. And when we go back and ask them for safety concerns, they're like, "I don't know who to call because I'm literally coming to you because I don't like the people that I would put there."
Right.
And if you also look at today's generation, this no contact thing is a big thing. And a lot of the no contact is the parents. So who are they going to put? And if there's so many trust issues, who am I going to say is my emergency contact?
And we're much more mobile than we used to be. I mean,
yes.
Families don't live all in the same place anymore. Kids are all over the world. My dad may be in a different location. I mean, so you don't have that. It's even more important, the subject we're talking about, because you don't have that kind of geographical connection anymore.
It's important to have planning and knowledge because, again, the way that this world is today, you never know if you're going to make it till tomorrow. And so why let that burden, and I'm just going to say it for what it is, death can be a burden on a family, especially if there was no foresight planning or financial stability to be able to do it. If I'm already struggling to pay my bills and I lose a loved one, what's going to take priority, my bills or my loved one?
Or having an insurance policy.
Exactly.
It'll help you pay your bills and pay your house.
Thank God for that. What's that fundraising website?
GoFundMe.
They buried a lot of folks.
They have. They really have.
They have buried a lot of folks.
But then you say you put this information out over and over and over again, and the people decide not to listen to you. And then the next thing you know, they're having a crisis in their family because they didn't listen to you. And then they're asking you for money. Do you still give? I don't know. I don't know.
You don't want my answer.
H to the N.
Well, the good thing in this,
There's a good song a long time ago that gives my answer.
Yeah, I've never. The good thing about this country, though, I've never seen a body tossed to the side of the road. So, there's a.
That's a process. You can pick it up and go use it for science or something.
Yeah, I'm sure that goes on. Especially at the lower levels.
So today, I'm sorry, Claude, I didn't mean to interrupt you. All right, so today let's fine tune this discussion about when you enter the hospital, and you're probably not going to come out of the hospital. How does that work from admission to either your death?
So I'm going to focus on an ICU admission just because that's like the highest level of care.
What's ICU?
Look at that. Way to ask some questions. Intensive care unit.
Okay.
So let's say you're admitted to a hospital in an intensive care unit. Okay. There's a lot of rules, a lot of restrictions because you require an intense amount of care. From that intensive care unit, they get you stabilized. And that now it's what do we do? What's next? Stabilization, completely frank, is based on your insurance. And it's based on who will take you at the next level of care. So if you are hospitalized and let's say you had some medical thing happen to you and now you've got like a port, which is basically like a hole where they can directly inject medications into you. Let's say you're on IV medications or antibiotics. Let's say you need blood transfusions. Like you need a lot of care, something that's going to require 24/7 care. What your care manager will do is they will take your clinicals, they make a packet, and your clinicals is just everything the hospital has done and what the doctor recommends to happen next. And that also includes your recent vitals, and it includes your financial information, your name, your address. It includes everything about you. It's like a little bio. Your care manager will then take that with your face sheet. On your face sheet, it says your name, your date of birth, your social, your insurance information. That's the first 3 lines. They will send those clinicals over to every provider that is within the level of care you need. So let's say you need to go from ICU to hospice. Okay? They will take that. Hospice is a level of care where you are transitioning to end of life, where it's been established and understood. There's no going back. You're not going to go back to the way you were. It's more about just making you comfortable until natural happens. So if you are transitioning from ICU level of care to a hospice level of care, they will take those clinicals, they will send it to every hospice that they can to see if they will accept you. So what happens is those people that work in those hospice will take your intake packet. Half of the packet goes to the director of clinical or the doctor that's over the entire hospice. They will review those clinicals. Another part of the packet goes to the charge nurse, again, at that hospice. Another part of that packet goes to the financial department. Okay. To get an approval, you are going to hear from the doctor first. The doctor will look and say, okay, yeah, we can take this person from a clinical perspective. Then the charge nurse will have to say, yep, this is something we are staffed for. We are prepared for. We can accept this person. We've got room for them. Good to go. Then it gets to finances. This is typically where the no comes from. The financial person runs your benefits. They find out how much money it will cost and everything. And they will either call you and they will tell you, this is how much money you have to pay out of pocket for your family member to come here. We're prepared to accept them. However, it might cost you $400 a day out of pocket. It might cost you this amount. And they will break down all the finances for you. If you say, no, I can't afford that, all of a sudden, now you're denied. But they're not going to say you're denied because of lacking of financial ability, because that is a violation. They cannot deny you care based off of your financial ability. They will say that you did not meet medical criteria. Or you do not meet the criteria of the facility. And if you ask specifically, well, what's the criteria I did not meet? They will not tell you.
Wow.
If you want to test this theory, you can call any inpatient facility and you can ask them, do you have a bed available for this type of person? And they will always tell you, we're not sure, you can send us the clinicals and we'll look at it. This experience myself, I directly worked in intake. I worked in intake for the first half of my career. And the only answer you were trained to give is, send us the clinicals and we'll take a look at it. Because if we're not medically capable to take you, we can't take you. But the reality is you either do not have funding to be able to stay here, or you're not prepared to pay it. So then it goes to the next facility, and it just keeps going down the line. Every facility will do the same thing and to decide if you can stay there or not. So then what ends up happening when you get a whole pile of no's, let's say every hospice says no, we can't take this person. And they all say don't meet medical criteria. What your care manager is supposed to do is to come, or your social worker is supposed to come and talk to the family member that's there and say, hey, these are the challenges as to why we cannot get this individual into hospice. And if it is a financial component, they're supposed to give you resources. And they're supposed to say, hey, give a call to these places and see if they can financially help you with this.
The patient has to do that? The patient family?
The patient is supposed to do that. And the reason why is because most of these resources are third party, which means they're not going to sit up and the hospital's not able to call and be like, yeah, this is everything that's going on, because now we're crossing into gray areas of confidentiality. Mm-hmm. So we put the stress on the family that's already stressed out, who's already stressed out because you're getting calls being told you've got $10,000-$15,000 out of pocket for your family member to go to hospice. But hey, call these places and see if they'll help you. So now you have to go through another process to get financial support. On the back end, what that care manager is supposed to do, they're also supposed to go back to those hospice places and see if there is anything that can be done to maybe change their decision. If it is a true medical denial, like a big one that we see, or that I did see when I worked in hospice, is when someone is on too many medications, or they have too many like open sores or active infections or things like that. So if you call the place back and they say
antibiotics, right?
Right. They can say, we can accept them. However, we need this part of their medical to change. Okay, cool. Then that care manager goes to the doctor and says, hey, we can get an approval for this facility, but we need this to change. Another piece that the care managers can do to help you understand is to truly understand what your benefits are before these packets even go out. So a lot of places for hospice, they give you a certain number of days that are 100% covered. Prime example, some carve-outs of Medicare will cover up to 20 days of hospice, but on day 21, you got to pay out of pocket. So explaining that clearly to the family that day 1 through 20, 100% covered. Day 21, you're going to have to pay.
So what about the insurance policy?
That's what I was just about to say.
Okay.
There are also some hospice places, assisted living and care places that they will take over your death policy or your life insurance policy as a means of payment. So then once you pass, that facility gets your policy to pay for the care while you were there. So, but those are all conversations that have to be had from the family to the facility. The care manager can't have those conversations for you.
So the money insurance policy, if it's $100,000 policy, they will care for you up until that's exhausted.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you're going to hospice, the understanding is you might not be there very long. Hospice care is end-of-life care. It is designed to keep you the highest level of comfort that they possibly can until you naturally transition.
Mm-hmm.
So the expectation is that you are never going to reach $100,000 of care. However, this policy now belongs to them because of your inability to pay.
Yeah, there's not too many Jimmy Carters around.
Yeah.
That stay in hospice for a year.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So most of us are getting like 20, 30, $40,000 policies. So they can eat that up in a
Yep.
few weeks, right?
Yes, exactly.
And then that individual with that big 30,000, 30, $40,000 policy, thinking they got about to get some money, end up with nothing.
Uh-huh.
How
And
about hospice? I'm sorry.
Oh no, I wasn't saying anything.
No, how about hospice care in a facility versus hospice care at home? Is it I mean, is that an option?
Yeah, no, that's definitely an option. They have home health,
Is
home.
that cheaper?
Yes and no. So this kind of comes back into the space of like how insurance billing is, and it's going to be based off of what your insurance will pay for. Some insurances do not pay for outpatient hospice care. Some insurances do. But again, that's part of that understanding. So, same thing, if you're in the hospital and you have a care manager, you can ask your care manager or ask the financial department, like, hey, can you give me a clear understanding of what is my financial responsibility for in home hospice or out of home home hospice care? So you can make a informed decision. If you do in home hospice care, same concept. You might have a copay, you might have so many days. A lot of times with like at home hospice care, you are paying per provider that comes in. So if the doctor comes in, that's one CPT code. And a CPT code is a procedure code that's used for billing purposes. So if a doctor comes in, that's one CPT code. If a nurse comes in for 30 minutes, that's a CPT code. If they give you a medication, that's a CPT code. If they look at you, that's a CPT code. And if your insurance doesn't pay for those CPT codes, then you are responsible for the bill. And so what ends up happening is these hospice companies and these, life after death companies, they end up absorbing a lot of life insurance policies for people because of their inability to pay. But then the family is still left with out of pocket debt. Because even though the company is absorbing that income, you're still left with the money owed to the insurance company.
so you end up broke
Yeah, you
or
still end up.
mortgaging or trying to put your house up as
Yep.
collateral,
Yep.
which
Exactly.
is a problem too. That's how Black folks end up losing a lot of real estate because they put that house up not knowing that it's fixing to eat into that house. And if you can't pay the cash,
Mm-hmm.
get that house out, then they own it.
You know,
Yep.
it's funny. I worked on city council, and I was there for 10 years, and I went to a lot of workshops, a lot of informational gatherings. This subject in a majority minority community, this subject never came up. This was never one of those informational workshops, or it just never.
Like our guest last week, Miss Linda said that she goes to one once a year at her church
Right,
about how in the life care.
right.
So let's reiterate what we talked about. We've been on about an hour now. We talked about from getting insurance before you become ill, and we've talked about going into the hospital as an ill person and non-recoverable person. We've talked about hospice care, in home, out home. We've talked about burial expenses. We've talked about funeral homes. We've really covered this whole topic from cradle to grave and after the grave,
Mm-hmm.
with losing your properties and losing your collateral and you losing your mentality as well, because that whole process really sends you into a position where you can become insane and end up in the next bed,
Mm-hmm.
you know, which you have to kind of prepare yourself ahead of time if you don't intend to be in that next bed, because this is not something you can fly by night and do or decide that you want to do or don't want to do. It's a process that will take a toll on your life. So you'll be dead next if you don't watch what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And what bothers me the most about our people is we know that this is a terrible process that we have to learn and execute, but we don't plan it for ourselves. We
Mm-mm.
we got everything straight for this person that's going to the next life, but we don't have a thing in place for ourselves. But we're there to make sure everything's right, but nothing's there for them. And
Mm-hmm.
that creates a bigger issue because we just keep repeating the same dumb shit. I'm just sorry to say it. We have to break this damn cycle somewhere. And the more we push this information out there, the better we become equipped to break the cycle. And I really commend you for what you do with your Helen's Project Foundation. It's the epitome of what Black people should be doing for Black people, taking them to another level mentally, because that's where we're lacking our growth. We're stuck in this time zone that we need to break out of. And that's what I'm asking the listeners to do, is to change the way you operate. Because if you keep doing the same thing, you keep getting the same.
The definition of insanity.
All right, so we're going to ask Miss Kayla to give us her final thoughts, and then Mr. Claude, and then I'll take us on out. Go ahead.
Well, I'm going to use this opportunity to do a little plug here, right? Just because, hey, why not? So Helen's Project, few things. If you like to donate, please visit helensproject.org. Hit that donate button. Donations, again, are supported to provide access and affordability to mental health care. We're looking for some new board members, especially going into 2025. We've got some major goals that we really want to hit. So we're looking for passionate people who are compassionate and passionate about the impact that we're creating, not only on our communities, but on a larger structure, larger scale for Black people, people of color, period. Right. And that doesn't mean we don't serve people who are not of color. We do. We serve everybody. We are completely inclusive. And then last but not least, my book is on Amazon. It is my business strategy workbook. I do get a lot of people who ask a lot of questions about building your business and what do I need to think about beforehand. It's got some great activities and worksheets and things in there that can really get you thinking, is being an entrepreneur something I really want to do, before you start investing a bunch of money and realizing this is hard. So with all of that, I really do hope that this conversation at least stimulated more questions for you to ask, or even more opportunities for you to realize, like, you know what, maybe I need to start asking more questions and recognizing I don't know everything, and being willing to just say, like, hey, you need to tell me what that word means, because I don't know what that is. And I also hope that this conversation did stimulate more people to be considerate or even open to going to therapy and realizing that it doesn't mean you're crazy. It just means you need a place to be heard. So with all of that, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for the invitation, and hopefully I'll be back again soon.
Well, thank you so much, Miss Kayla. We appreciate your attendance. Mr. Claude, you got anything to say to her before she go?
Oh no, Kayla, I just want to thank you for being on the show, and thank you for, you've educated me. I mean, I didn't know about the driver's license, so if we just take that one thing away, I think you've made a significant contribution to our show today. And I want to thank Brother Bey for choosing this topic, because I think it's one of those deep problems in our communities that we never talk about, we never discuss until it's too late. So we've been able to share and put the focus on this issue. I think it's important. I want to thank you for being a part of it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
At any time, Miss Kayla, you're welcome to come back on the show. We really appreciate your input. So thank you, and have a good afternoon. I understand you just got a dog.
Yeah. No, I did not get a dog. Let me be clear. I did not get a dog. My children and my dad got a dog. I did not get a dog. And I stand 10 toes down on that. I said I didn't want another dog.
What kind of dog did your children get?
They got a purebred miniature Australian Shepherd, and her name is Nala. She's so smart, and she's so cute. And she's got blue-gray eyes. She's
okay, cool. Yes. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, Mr. Claude. I mean, we've had some great information today.
I I learned a lot. Kayla was an excellent guest on this topic. If we can just get people to take a look at their driver's license and get that information filled out, I think that would be wonderful. But I think just talking about this show, just elevating this show, because there's a divide in our communities. I mean, when there's an economic divide. Look at our politicians today, for example. These are not the same politicians that came out of the 70s and the 60s. You know, the politicians today are just like the mainstream politicians. They're focusing on a whole different agenda. Right. And so anytime that we can pull back on that, I think it's a benefit to our community.
Right.
And this is one of those issues that just doesn't get talked about.
Right.
You know, I listen to a lot of shows. I think I'm just about as well read as anybody. But this is just, and like I was explaining to Kayla, when I worked in council, this was not one of those issues that I saw nonprofits addressing. I mean, it was never, I never attended a workshop dealing with this issue, death, grief, and the afterlife process.
Because it seems like we want to bring this type of information to our people more than not, but we don't.
Well, like I say, I applaud the Black News Network for tackling this issue. It's one of those things that a lot of communities just don't talk about.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of our communities.
So close us out with what you would wish our listening audience to do.
Well, I think I would just wish our audience to put this in the forefront before it's too late. You know, and there's actually plenty of material out there to help you with this process. You can visit your local funeral home, your insurance company. I mean, there is so much material out there, and we just got to grab it by the hand and utilize it.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, Mr. Claude, that's Mr. Claude Foster from Houston, our co-host for the Black News Network. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and take you out, and we will proceed to close, but I do have a couple of comments before we go.
All right,
the one thing that we all must do is get off of our individuality and say we do need somebody sometime to help us through this process here in America, because it doesn't get any easier for us as Black people. And that is something that we have to contend with. And if we don't start to take care of our own older people and our even some of the young ones now, young people are dying just as fast as the old ones. We can't depend on a rich rapper or somebody with a big pocket of money to bury us. We need to depend on our own individuality to do our internment. If we are not taking care of that kind of business, who's going to do it for us? You can't wait till somebody died to start the process. You need to start the process ahead of time, because if you don't, you end up spending 3 to 4 times more than what you would spend if you pre-plan. My grandfather, we planned his funeral about 6 years before he died at 96. And it was about $5,400, the total funeral. But when he passed, the funeral home director told me that the exact same funeral today would run you $9,700. So it almost doubled in the course of 5 or 6 years. So the funeral expenses are going up and our income levels are stagnant. So if you intend to be able to take care of your loved ones, I really highly, strongly recommend that you find someone to give you an insurance policy on the people that you are responsible for. Everybody that you're responsible for should have an insurance policy. I highly recommend that. And if you need any more information, all you got to do is contact the Black News Network, the real voice of Black USA, and we'll give you the information. It's for free. Nothing we put out here going to cost you anything. Not even the counseling that's provided by Helen Project. I mean, it goes through your insurance, of course, but it's still not going to cost you any out-of-pocket money. So with that, this is the Black News Network, the real voice of Black USA, bringing you the news from a Black perspective. We don't own the rights to the music, but we do own the rights to what we say. We'll be back next Sunday with a different topic, bringing you some information that you can use to do what you need to do to survive in America. And as you can see, the affirmative action program disappeared. The DI program has disappeared. And now a whole bunch of inspector generals have disappeared. I mean, and now immigrants are disappearing. They're taking them by a plane load, military plane load, back across the border, and saying that other countries have no choice but to take them. So pay attention to what's happening here in America. These things do affect us. And if we don't get it right, then somebody's gonna get it right for us, but we're gonna be at the wrong end of the stick. So with that, I'm Brother Smith-Bey with the Black News Network. We'll be coming at you again next Sunday at 3:30 p.m.